When I was in college a few years ago, I got assigned to one of those semester-long group projects that everyone secretly dreads. You know the kind. Worth a huge percentage of your final grade, impossible to do alone, and completely dependent on whether you end up with competent teammates. Unfortunately, I didn't exactly hit the jackpot. There were 3 of us on the team, and from our very first meeting, it was obvious we were operating on completely different wavelengths. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let me be clear. I don't have anything against vegetarians, environmentalists, or people who care deeply about sustainability. Honestly, I think it's great when people are passionate about something. The problem wasn't what they believed. The problem was that they acted like their beliefs automatically made them better than everyone else. Every conversation somehow turned into a lecture. Our assignment was supposed to be a practical research project. We needed to analyze agricultural practices, gather information from reliable sources, compare methods, and produce a professional report. Simple enough. At least that's what I thought. My teammates had very different ideas. Within the first week, they'd already decided that our project wasn't just about agriculture anymore. It was about changing people's minds. One of them walked into our meeting carrying a reusable cloth bag covered in environmental slogans. The other arrived on an old bicycle, proudly announcing she'd ridden nearly 8 miles to campus. "I just can't justify driving anymore," she said, while locking her helmet to her backpack. "It's such an unnecessary carbon footprint." I simply nodded. "Cool," I replied. That should have been the end of it. Instead, they looked at me. "So, did you drive?" "Yeah." "Oh." Just one word. But somehow that tiny little "oh" carried enough judgment to make me feel like I'd admitted to dumping motor oil into a river. Things only got more awkward from there. We usually met around lunchtime, and one afternoon I pulled a ham sandwich out of my backpack. One teammate glanced over and sighed dramatically. I could never eat that. I looked up. "Okay?" I mean, once you really think about where meat comes from, it just becomes impossible. The other teammate nodded in complete agreement. I honestly don't even miss it anymore. Neither of them asked what I thought. Neither of them cared. It wasn't a conversation. It was a performance. I quietly ate my sandwich while pretending to focus on my laptop. Little comments like that became almost routine. Every single meeting. If someone mentioned flying somewhere on vacation, "Oh, we don't fly unless it's absolutely unavoidable." If coffee came up, "We only buy fair trade beans." If someone bought bottled water, "I just can't support plastic waste." It was exhausting. Again, none of those things bothered me by themselves. People are free to live however they want. What annoyed me was the constant implication that if you weren't making the exact same choices, you were somehow morally inferior. Eventually, I just stopped responding. It wasn't worth arguing. Whenever one of them made another passive-aggressive remark, I'd just nod and continue working. Thankfully, there was plenty of work to keep me busy. While they spent hours discussing ethics and philosophy, I focused on what would actually earn us a good grade. I organized our research, I built outlines, I collected academic sources, I formatted citations, I created spreadsheets. I handled most of the technical work because someone had to. Looking back, I probably should have spoken up earlier. Instead, I figured it was easier to keep my head down until the semester ended. Then came the meeting that finally pushed me over the edge. We were reviewing our progress when one teammate suddenly said, "I think we're missing something important." "What?" I asked. "We need first-hand perspectives." I shrugged. "Okay. From who?" "Farmers." I assumed they meant interviews over email or maybe a phone call. "No," she continued excitedly. "We should actually visit several local farms." "Drive out there?" "Exactly." The other teammate practically lit up. "Oh my gosh, yes! We could compare different sustainable farming practices. We could spend a day at each one. We'd get authentic observations and real conversations." The ideas just kept snowballing. I sat there listening while they planned what sounded less like research and more like a road trip. Finally, I interrupted. "Hold on." They stopped talking. "How many farms are you thinking?" "Oh, probably 3. "And how long would that take?" "Maybe 2 or 3 days." I stared at them. "Our report is due next week." "Exactly," one replied. "So we'd better get started." I honestly thought they were joking. They weren't. They'd somehow convinced themselves that spending nearly half of our final week driving around the countryside was essential to the project. I looked down at our project timeline. We still had sections to write, charts to finish, data to analyze, editing, formatting, practice presentations. There wasn't enough time as it was. This makes sense, I finally said. Silence. One teammate frowned. Why not? Because we already have more than enough research, but this would make it stronger. Maybe a little. It would make it authentic. It'll also take 3 days. They exchanged a look. I could tell they weren't expecting any resistance. I just don't think it's worth the time, I continued. We're already behind schedule. One teammate leaned back in her chair. I think you're underestimating how valuable first-hand experiences are. I'm not saying they're not valuable. I'm saying they're unnecessary. She crossed her arms. So you're refusing to participate? I took a breath before answering. I'm saying that if you both really want to go ahead. I'm not stopping you. They looked surprised. But I'm staying here. Neither of them spoke. I've already handled a huge chunk of the research, I said calmly. While you're visiting farms, I'll finish the remaining sections of the report. So you'll still contribute? I never said I wouldn't. I simply wasn't willing to spend 3 full days driving around for information that we could already find in published research papers. To my surprise, they accepted my decision without much argument. Okay, one finally said. If you're sure. I'm sure. We shook hands, divided the remaining tasks, and ended the meeting. As I walked back to my car that afternoon, I actually felt relieved. I figured we'd each do our part, finish the project, and move on with our lives. At the time, I had no idea that my decision to stay behind was about to leave me carrying almost the entire workload, and that by the end of the semester, I'd come up with one of the pettiest acts of revenge I've ever taken.
The following Monday, my teammates headed out bright and early for their grand tour of local farms. Before leaving, they stopped by the library, where we'd been meeting all semester. One of them smiled and said, "We'll bring back some incredible material." "I'm sure you will," I replied. The other added, "You're going to be amazed by the people we meet." "I hope so." Then they grabbed their backpacks, climbed into one of their cars, and drove off. As soon as they left, I opened my laptop, put on my headphones, and got to work. At first, I figured I'd just polish up a few sections while they were gone, maybe organize our sources, clean up the formatting, and prepare a rough draft for everyone to review. Instead, I discovered just how much work had quietly been left unfinished. Entire sections were nothing more than bullet points. One chapter literally contained a single sentence followed by, "We'll write this after the interviews." Another page was filled with highlighted notes copied from different articles, but hadn't been turned into actual paragraphs. The graphs still needed captions, our citations were inconsistent, the conclusion didn't even exist yet. I sat back in my chair and rubbed my forehead. So I'm basically writing this thing myself? No one answered, of course. It was just me and a growing to-do list. I decided there wasn't any point complaining. The report wasn't going to write itself. Over the next 3 days, my routine barely changed. Wake up, grab coffee, head to campus, work until the library closed, go home, sleep. Repeat. Every few hours, I'd receive another message from the group chat. "We're at an organic dairy farm. This place is incredible. You wouldn't believe how passionate these farmers are." They sent pictures of green fields stretching into the distance, cows grazing under blue skies, fresh vegetables, old barns. One even sent a selfie petting a goat with the caption, "Best research day ever." Meanwhile, I was staring at spreadsheets. I honestly couldn't tell whether I was jealous or annoyed, probably a little of both. By Wednesday afternoon, I had transformed what had been a scattered collection of notes into something that actually resembled a professional report. I rewrote introductions, I reorganized sections, I corrected grammar, I standardized every citation, I built charts that were actually readable. I even redesigned the formatting so it looked polished and consistent. When my teammates finally returned, they were full of energy. "You should have come," one of them said as she dropped into a chair. "It was amazing. We learned so much." "I'm glad it went well." Then they opened their notebooks. For the next hour, they enthusiastically told me about every farm they'd visited. One specialized in regenerative agriculture, another focused on water conservation, the third experimented with rotational grazing. Some of the stories were genuinely interesting, I won't deny that. But once we started comparing their notes with our assignment requirements, reality set in. Our professor had asked for a research-based report, not travel journals, not personal reflections, not farm reviews. Most of what they'd gathered simply didn't fit. We ended up pulling out maybe 2 quotations from interviews, A couple of statistics, one photograph, and a short paragraph describing sustainable farming from first-hand observations. That was it. 3 days, hundreds of miles, hours of conversations, reduced to a few paragraphs near the end of a report that was nearly 50 pages long. Nobody actually said it out loud, but I think we all realized the same thing. The trip hadn't been necessary. As we finished integrating their material, one teammate looked through the document. Wow. What? You got a lot done. I couldn't help laughing. A lot? She scrolled through page after page. When did you write all this? While you guys were gone. Her eyes widened. This wasn't here before. No. I thought we only had a rough outline. We did. There was a brief silence. Then she smiled awkwardly. Well, thanks. The other teammate nodded. Seriously. We appreciate it. I accepted the compliment, but something still bothered me. Not because they hadn't thanked me. They had. It was because they'd never really understood what happened. While they'd spent 3 enjoyable days visiting farms, I'd spent those same 3 days making sure we actually had a project worth submitting. Without that work, there wouldn't have been much to hand in. Still, I decided it wasn't worth arguing. The semester was almost over. Our presentation went surprisingly well. The professor complimented our organization, our research quality, and the overall professionalism of the report. We received one of the highest grades in the class. Everyone celebrated. For a moment, all the frustration I'd been carrying disappeared. Then someone suggested we have a little celebration before everyone headed home for the summer. What if we do a potluck? I love that idea. We can all bring something homemade. Perfect. Everyone agreed. I almost skipped it. Part of me just wanted the semester to be over, but another part thought it might be nice to end things on a positive note. So I said yes. That evening, while driving home, I started thinking about what I could bring. Chips? Too boring. Pizza? Too easy. Cookies? Everyone makes cookies. Then it hit me. Brownies. Not just any brownies. My brownies. I'd been making the same recipe for years. It originally came from an old family cookbook, but I'd adjusted it over time until it was exactly how I liked it. Rich chocolate flavor, perfectly crisp edges, a soft, almost fudgy center. Just enough espresso powder to deepen the chocolate without tasting like coffee. A little extra vanilla. A pinch of flaky sea salt on top. Every time I made them, people asked for the recipe, without fail. Friends, neighbors, coworkers, family gatherings. They always disappeared first. As I stood in my kitchen pulling ingredients out of the pantry, I smiled to myself. Maybe this was exactly what I'd bring. The next afternoon, the smell of chocolate filled my apartment. The brownies baked to perfection. When I pulled the pan from the oven, the tops had developed that beautiful, shiny, paper-thin crust that every brownie lover hopes for. I let them cool completely before cutting them into perfect squares. Looking at the tray, I couldn't help thinking they might be the best batch I'd ever made. I packed them carefully, covered the pan with foil, and headed to campus. I still wasn't planning anything. At least, not yet. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny idea had started forming. Nothing dramatic, nothing cruel. Just something incredibly petty. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more it made me smile.
The potluck was held the day after we officially submitted our project. For the first time all semester, nobody had laptops open. No one was worried about deadlines, citations, or presentations. We were just a group of tired college students looking forward to a good meal after weeks of stress. Everyone showed up carrying something homemade. There was baked macaroni and cheese, homemade pasta salad, fresh fruit, a giant container of chili, garlic bread, and enough chips and dips to feed an army. I walked in carrying my tray of brownies. The second I set them on the table, a couple of people wandered over. "Did you make those?" "Yep. They smell amazing." One guy laughed. "I'm grabbing one before they're gone." I smiled. "Be my guest." People started filling their plates, chatting about summer plans and joking about how nice it felt to finally be done with the semester. Eventually, someone took the first bite of one of my brownies. She stopped chewing for a second. "Oh my gosh!" Another student looked over. "What? You have to try these." Within minutes, people were reaching across the table. "I'll take one." "Actually, make that too." I wasn't planning on dessert, but now I kind of have to. Even my 2 teammates grabbed brownies. One of them took a bite, then looked at me with genuine surprise. "Okay, these are incredible." The other immediately agreed. No, seriously, these might be the best brownies I've ever had. I laughed. Thanks. I mean it. She looked back at the empty square she'd already finished. Can I grab another? There are plenty. For the next half hour, people kept coming back. Every time I looked over, another brownie had disappeared. Someone I'd barely spoken to all semester stopped beside me. Who made these? I did. Can I ask you something? Sure. What's your secret? I shrugged. A lot of chocolate. He laughed. No, seriously. I've spent years tweaking the recipe. I need it. We'll see. I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. By the time everyone finished eating, my tray was completely empty. Not a single crumb remained. One of my teammates carried the empty pan back to me. I think this answers whether people like them. I guess so. She smiled. So when are you sending us the recipe? I paused for just a second. Then I smiled back. Absolutely. Really? Of course. Promise? I promise. At that exact moment, a tiny, wonderfully petty idea finally clicked into place. It wasn't about hurting anyone. It wasn't about embarrassing them. It wasn't even about getting even for all the smug comments throughout the semester. It was simply this. They were never getting that recipe. Ever. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. Hey, don't forget about the brownie recipe. I looked at the message and chuckled. I typed back. Absolutely. I just need to type it all out. I'll send it tonight. Of course. I never did. The next day, another message arrived. Still waiting. LOL. I replied. Sorry, totally forgot after work. Tomorrow for sure. Tomorrow came. Nothing. A week later. Recipe? Oops, my notebook's at my parents' house. I'll send it this weekend. Weekend came. Nothing. Eventually, our project officially ended, grades were finalized, and everyone went their separate ways. I figured that was probably the last I'd hear about it. Then, about 6 months later, my phone buzzed again. It was one of my former teammates. Hey, random question. Do you still have that brownie recipe? I actually laughed out loud. She hadn't forgotten. I stared at the screen for a minute before replying. Of course I do. I'll send it tonight after I get home. Reader, I did not send it that night. Months turned into years. Every once in a while, completely out of nowhere, I'd get another message. Those brownies randomly popped into my head today. Do you still have the recipe? Or, I tried making brownies yesterday and they weren't even close. Help me out. Or my personal favorite. My husband keeps asking about those brownies from college. Please end my suffering and send the recipe. Every single time, I'd answer politely. Definitely. I'll look for it. I know exactly where it is. Remind me tonight. Sorry, life's been crazy. I haven't forgotten. Technically, none of those statements were lies. I did know where the recipe was. I simply had no intention of sharing it. At one point, I even considered finally sending it. I'd open the folder where I keep my recipes, look at the card with all my handwritten notes, and think, close the folder, move on with my day. It became a running joke with myself. Whenever one of those messages appeared, I'd smile before I even opened it. Not because I hated these people. Honestly, I didn't. Looking back, they were decent enough classmates. We simply had very different personalities. They cared deeply about changing the world. I cared about finishing assignments efficiently. They loved turning everything into a philosophical discussion. I preferred getting things done. Neither approach was necessarily wrong. But after weeks of feeling quietly judged over sandwiches, cars, and every other tiny life choice I made, withholding one dessert recipe somehow felt like the perfect response. Petty? Absolutely. Harmless? Completely. No one got hurt. Nobody's grade suffered. Nobody's reputation was damaged. The only consequence was that a handful of people would occasionally remember a really good brownie they'd eaten years ago and realize they still couldn't make themselves. Honestly, I think that's hilarious. Even now, every so often, one of those old classmates will pop up in my messages. The conversation almost always starts the same way. Hey, long time no see. We exchange a few updates about work, family, or life. Then, almost inevitably, so, any chance you still got that brownie recipe? I grin every single time. I type the same familiar response. Absolutely, I'll send it over tonight. Then I set my phone down, walk into my kitchen, open the drawer where that recipe card has lived for years, and smile. Because some people get revenge with elaborate schemes. Some people argue. Some people hold grudges. Me? I simply let them spend the rest of their lives wondering what made those brownies taste so unbelievably good. For all the smug comments, the unnecessary farm trips, and the endless little lectures, I think that's a perfectly fitting punishment. After all, they'll probably bake hundreds of brownies over the years. Some will be good, a few might even be great, but they'll never know if any of them measure up to the one recipe they never got. And somehow, that's the sweetest part of the whole story.